Tell me how can we stand up and up? We don't have to wait. Tell me how can we stand? Is this love or are we just friends? Tell me how can we stand up and up? We don't have to wait. Tell me how can we stand? How can we stand? How can we stand? Is this love or are we just friends? Tell me how can we stand up and up? We don't have to wait. Tell me how can we stand? How can we stand? How can we stand?
Going to be very fun.
Nice knowing you, everyone.
Yep, absolutely. Now, the disclaimer, we are not neuroscientists, we are not psychologists or anything like that. We are just putting things together that we are seeing going on out there. And, right, I've chosen, we weren't initially going to start this off with Twitch as the lead, but I feel like it's what people might actually see and feel quite a lot. And it does tie into, like, the kind of almost, like, just dopamine burnout. Don't want to pseudoscience you in that one, of course.
Yes.
But you know, people just keep on getting the hit, chasing the hit, and how there's a lot of overlap between problem gambling and video games, which is kind of basically shown by a massive quantity of the world's largest streamers essentially being gambling addicts.
Yeah.
Maybe even literally being gambling addicts.
Yeah, or as they might say to make it sound a little bit nicer, Gamba addicts.
Some Gamba content.
Yeah.
Yes, because, you know, as you know, language does inform how we think, how we talk. I think some fella wrote a book about that a while ago. And, yeah, I just changed the word. It's not gambling, it's Gamba, apparently. Man, this is so scummy. Okay. I mean, there's lots of, I mean, take Rich Campbell and OTK.
Yeah.
You know, the OTK guys are, you know, taking the piss out of him all the time for this. Trainwrecks, XQC, Ludwig, you talked about, you know, he pretty much admitted, like, he had a gambling problem before he, you know, before he, like, really popped off on, like, Twitch and YouTube. But okay, so why are they all gamblers?
Yeah, that's exactly the things. Like, what is obviously correlation is not causation, right? But you look and go, why are some of the top people on Twitch kind of all gamblers? And why do they play? Obviously, they're the people who play like games all day long, or maybe obviously just training content and stuff. But my theory is it is just generally the case of. I mean, you see it with rich people as well. You see it with just the general extremity of maybe pleasure is not the right term, but dopamine, the extreme excitement, the extreme rush of enjoying something. And that just seems to lead to gambling a lot of the case. And I think, as far as I'm concerned, I actually think it might just be to do with the video game connection of you play video games all day long. Maybe that's your content. You're not going to enjoy video games, right? You're going to need to get excitement from something else because you're just drip feeding yourself with video games all day long. So, where do you go? The same tactics are used in gambling in casinos.
Yep.
That's where a lot of mobile monetization in games and game design gets like their ideas from. It's from how Las Vegas runs stuff. And that's the thing of just, it's basically just the extreme version of playing video games. And maybe that's why they all kind of turned to it in a sense.
Yeah. We have to kind of bring this into what's going on Twitch, like with Stake, which I had no idea about. I didn't even know the Twitch had a section called slots. It's insane to me. Twitch, your video games website. Why are you basically a gambling and softcore porn website? What are you fucking doing? Right? Like, I mean, it's continually.
Well, that's
how
the
do
thing.
people have any respect for Twitch? Then you even look at the weird Asmongold ban situation that happened earlier, and you just kind of realize they seem to genuinely just be incompetent.
Yeah, they definitely are. But the thing is, if you get rid of, you know what you say, the softcore porn, you get rid of the gambling, viewers go away. Because especially across a couple of streamers, and it might just be because they're entertaining when they're gambling, but they have substantially higher like views when they're gambling anything else. Was it Rushden, Aiden Ross, and Trainwreck? Specifically, Trainwreck got just continually slid up the Twitch like ranking overall from playing slots all the time. Just consistent improvement, getting like 30,000 average views.
Yeah.
At one point up to like 60 or 70,000 average views from gambling.
Now,
you don't want to take
all
that away,
sorts of bullshit has happened in and around this area in the past. As an example, the rigged loot boxes in websites, right, where like streamers and YouTubers were given better than normal odds in CSGO gambling, which obviously, you know, that's just a marketing tool for those sites. That's then used to an audience that doesn't really understand that what they're watching is rigged.
Yeah.
Or is maybe being played with house money.
Ooh,
You know, issues like this, right? And that leads to a deeply immoral situation where, you know, you're exposing a lot of people to gambling. You're giving people like the initial by watching along, and you're almost encouraging people to gamble more. And it's like, that's a pretty position to be in. Now what happens is Stake comes into the scene. Stake are a crypto casino. They're all over Twitch.
Really badly.
Crypto just kind of left a lot of Western verification stuff. Now this is kind of like different based on location. Allegedly, they've made some changes. I know in the UK, you cannot crypto gamble on Stake, so you would need a VPN, which is not really a problem for people to do these days.
Not at all.
I mean, apparently, right, according to Moist Critical, you need to be verified to withdraw,
Generally say that, right? They say
You should be
verified
ashamed
to
for not
crypto wallet
trusting
to
yourself.
play, but then you need actual identity verification to get your money out, which sounds extremely scummy, and it sounds illegal, but that's the point of crypto. It's not been legalized yet, or it's not, you know, things
It's not
that
regulated.
yeah, things that you can do that haven't been attacked by the law yet, so just free form to do whatever you want.
Yeah, which in many ways is the strength of crypto,
Yep.
right? Because people do want a deregulated, decentralized currency, and I think we can all understand why that is a desirable thing.
Wonderful principle.
But it can, you know, can be misused, can get a little bit funky. Now, Stake are big. I mean, sponsorships with the Everton Football Club in the UK. They're partnered with UFC, with Watford FC, and then other things. So millions a month in sponsorships. Aiden Ross actually leaked his crypto wallet address. Whoops. And was being paid just under $1 million in Ethereum a month by Stake. Last year, he was getting $2 million a month with another gambling sponsor. Go to XQC, a gambling partnership with Stake that apparently has resulted in $119 million of viewer money going to their site via his affiliate link.
Welcome to Mobile Legends.
The house always wins. Simple
5
as that.
seconds
So
till the enemy
it's like
reaches the
controlling
battlefield.
this, the
Smash them.
gaming.
All troops deployed.
It's at best because it's just a fancy layer of bing bing wahoo on top of a mathematical calculation that is always going to return 4% of the money.
Would
that
you
put
like
in.
to have a drink with me?
Then it falls to the reason why even if people know content in theory, if they don't have the discipline, they're still going to fuck up. Because, yeah, 97% say return back to you.
Give
When
life
you run this
to
experiment
magic,
over a very
not
long
magic
time,
to
so
life.
if you are betting like 0.5% or 1% of your float, yeah, you'll get like 97% back. But if people are betting 5% of their float or
I know who I am, and you will
all of
soon know as
lose
well.
all of the money they put in. Massively increases. Meaning that even though the rate of return to the gambler is
The more your fear grows,
0.5%
the smaller
on
you
what they put in,
become.
that is not given back to the people evenly. Meaning you go bust.
Let's see who has
casino
the
has
last
got all the money.
laugh.
And this is the sort of thing that people just are not, they're not capable of thinking of that well.
Yeah.
And then they see the streamers that they watch using these, you know, massive amounts of money being bet, getting a really big jackpot, and they want that big jackpot.
Give life
So
to
maybe
magic, not magic to
say
life.
that the higher percentage you are betting or bet, higher percentage
Would
of
you
your
like to
total
have a
float,
drink with me?
then, you know, like the less kind of responsibility you are as a gambler, lead in, everything in this game,
The more your fear
how
grows,
you
the
actually
smaller
proceed to
you
use the
become.
float, the amount of money that you have put in.
Yeah, because it's not even about, you know, because obviously back in the way the CSGO was
First blood.
so people had chances. That inflated what people thought they could chance.
I know
to get
who
into
I
Ally has been
And
slain.
But that's not
You
even
will
the
soon
point.
know
It's
as
because we
well.
talked about this in a recent video, but the availability bias in a sense, where if you see something happening, you're more likely to think that actually will happen.
Yeah.
So if you see, and this isn't just about watching a streamer gamble for 8
Let's
hours
see
or
who has the last
as
laugh.
trainers did for 38 hours. That's pretty normal. But it's, you see the clips, right? It's clips. You'll see the
Give
clips. Someone will
life
share
to
you a clip.
magic,
You go to the top.
not
viewed
magic
clips
to
on slots,
life.
and I think the one I looked at was Rushstein, 242,000 views, winning
I know who I
$1
am,
million of Bitcoin.
and you
stake.
will soon know as well.
And there's a couple
An
of
ally
different-
has
couple
been
of other
slain.
from different stake games. And just because you see that happen, that's advertising. Obviously,
more
you
your
can
fear
ration yourself,
grows,
you'll go, okay,
The
well, no,
smaller you
I know
become.
that is a very small chance of happening, but there is a little excited monkey in your head going, go, make the big.
Would you
see
like
the
to
big
have a
money,
drink
make the
with
big money.
me?
Let's go. Yeah, that is going to be there. In the same way you see a really, I don't know, like a really tasty burger advert, and you know, well, I'm going to go to McDonald's, and that's not going to look like that
Let's see who has
But it
the
looks on
last
you anyway.
laugh.
because that's what advertising does, and that's what this stuff does. It uses things that you're not aware of to get under your skin, and kind of incentivize you. Not pushing, but incentivize. And that's
The more
case
your
where
fear
all of these
grows,
streamers are
the smaller
just,
you
I mean, that's
become.
why they've been paid, right? That's why they've been paid millions. That's why they've been given the affiliate codes, because you don't give
Give
someone
life to
a mil a
magic,
week
not
without
magic to
getting
life.
a
Killing
return.
spree.
VRI
Yeah.
positive.
That's how a business works. And the owner of Stake recently bought a 36 mil house in Australia.
Yeah.
Cash only. Just straight up went, oh, there you go. They also own penthouse offices in a city in Australia, I think, and a couple of other things. And you're like, well, where's that money coming from? That's coming from the people that are watching.
The enemy has slain the turtle.
From, you know, young adults, maybe even like late teens,
Twitch viewers
on
who,
like Twitch viewers.
yeah, which obviously, you know, you can.
Let's
put
see
18
who
questions
has
from
the
screen
last
if you want to.
laugh.
You can have a, oh, this is intended for mature audiences. Do you want to click? Do you want to continue watching? That's not a safeguard. Even disclosures aren't a safeguard. Even going, oh, because I think
I know who I am, and you will soon know as well.
Don't gamble. This is not likely to happen. This won't happen. But that's provably not. Actually, doesn't actually stop anyone. And
Would
I
you
mean,
like to
you
have
look
a
at
drink
cigarette
with
packets
me?
in the UK.
An ally has
They're
been
covered in the
slain.
most disgusting imagery of what happens when you smoke. People still smoke, and that's the thing. It's like it's all kind of.
Let's
performative
see
in a
who
way.
has the
Sure, it might have
last
some effect,
laugh.
but it's mostly performative.
Yeah.
Enemy has
I mean,
been
even
slain.
like SBC has admitted to losing almost $2 million
Shut down.
a month with his gambling off stream. He says, "I'm just easily addicted, so I just shouldn't gamble. I still do it. Is that good? No, it's terrible. That's an illness. I'm ill. But you know what? I can afford to be ill. I'm lucky." Then a lot
Yeah.
of people say, "Okay, your viewers can't."
I know
And are
who
those
I
disclaimers
am,
actually an
and
effective thing?
you will
Is
soon know
this
as
whole
well.
thing just a sorted enterprise that we should not be anywhere near involved with? on platforms like Twitch. Drake seemingly did an undisclosed
Would you like to have a
sponsorship
drink with me?
with Stake.
Seemingly, I'm not super sure
Yeah.
that's the case, but it seemed that way.
Handing out $1 million worth of Bitcoin while losing 20 million himself. Shan Puri of My First Million was intrigued and
The
apparently
more your
found
fear
that
grows,
it's all
the smaller
house
you
money.
become.
Yeah,
So
for-
apparently
yeah.
this is a celebrity betting with the house's funds.
Yeah, so as to whether that's literally
Give
100%
life
confirmed
to
true,
magic.
Ally
they
has
have no
been
idea
Not
what's going on
magic
with
to
them.
life.
Shan, who said that because they said they apparently found.
Yeah.
So it's a case of I'm not sure if they have 100% proof, but
Would you like to
Drake's
have a
worth
drink with
200
me?
mil or so at last estimate.
Request
The chances
backup.
he lost 20 mil on stream and didn't really.
Lightning?
Strike! You have slain an
Video
enemy.
page. This is a video page from
Yeah, this was a video of My First Million talking
Initiate
about
retreat.
these streams, and that's where I found the information about the owner buying a 36 mil house because the owner was completely anonymous. No one knew who they were.
course.
Give
until
life to
someone
magic.
saw a,
Not
I think it was
magic
a
to
21 or
life.
23-year-old bought a $36 million house in Australia, cash only. And said, that's a bit suspicious. Let's look.
I
Oh,
know who
they're
I
the
am,
CEO of Easy,
and you
Easy
will
Go, I
soon
think
know.
it was.
Ally has
Oh,
been slain.
What do they do? Oh, they're a game developer.
Lightning?
You have
We
slain
can't
an
find that
enemy.
on Stake.com. I wonder. Yeah, this was a comment from someone.
The way Stake works is the biggest streamers get
Our
$1 million a
turret
month,
has been
and then they
destroyed.
get 30% of the theoretical loss of all affiliate codes life. So a person with Drake's popularity, to a million Insta followers, if he converts a small percentage, he could be making.
The more your fear grows,
Their site,
the
though, actually
smaller
says that
you
it's 10% of
become.
the house edge.
Yeah.
Now, Wired found that 64 of the top 1,000 streamers were streaming crypto slots. As covered earlier, Trainwreck saw
Let lightning strike!
through gambling getting an average of 30
You have been
viewers
slain.
in the slots.
My magic
An enemy has
Yeah,
been
similar
slain.
with
out of
Rothstein as well.
control.
Ludwig admitted in a YouTube video to being a gambling addict before he found success
Launch
in YouTube.
attack.
And then when talking to Dr. K of Healthy Gamer, Critical nailed it, just saying it's really lucrative to be.
Yep. And that's the thing where this whole thing is the thing.
Would you like to have a
Our
drink?
turret has been
The streamers
destroyed.
didn't
The enemy has slain the
actually see
turtle.
very much people went in a whole big Discord message about that. You know, I'm not intending to be a role model. I'm just someone.
Let's see who has the last
If you
laugh.
want a role model, go talk to your parents, go talk to your peers. That's not my responsibility. And to a degree, you can kind of argue back and forth. Ultimately, I think the owner should realistically lie with
Give
Twitch
life to magic.
because they're the platform. They're
not
the one
magic
enabling
to
all of this, and
life.
they're the one who's getting a lot of the benefit from it. Ultimately, and it's a case of if you don't want to control the individual, then you have to control
The
the
more
platform.
your fear grows,
And
the smaller you
Anyway, you look at
become.
it, the only way to control
Lightning?
Slain an enemy.
it's from extremely good creators.
I know who I am, and you will soon know as well.
But if they're streamers and
Your
making
team
money,
destroyed a turret.
then, you know, if a streamer's making $1 million a month off Stake, that'll be $1 million a month they won't be asking off Twitch. Or they'll go, oh, Twitch want more of a cut of my subs? That's fine.
Give
My money
life
comes
to
from
magic,
sponsorships." Anyway.
not magic to
So as much
life.
as I think there is a whole do as I say thing that streamers are currently engaging with across the whole thing of
An
"Oh, you're doing
ally
this, it's
has
fine
been
for me,
slain.
don't do it, chat. That's bad parenting ultimately. As to whether they deserve the responsibility of being parents, no. But it's kind of a realism thing to it.
The
It's
more
very
your
helpful, but
fear
ultimately Twitch
grows,
should absolutely ban
the
this because it is
smaller you become.
complete and utter bullshit.
Yeah.
It is exploitative bullshit targeting vulnerable people, young adults, even children sometimes.
I know who I am, and
of
you
course,
will soon know as
Video games and
well.
gambling can be triggering similar
Ally
examples.
has been
The-
slain.
Yeah, ESRB and App Store for the ratings for Immortal don't mention any of
Would
the
you like to
monetization
have
as
a drink
warning
with
to
me?
people with a gambling issue. There's the whole thing, you know, are these things gambling? And a lot
Our
of people
turret
say, well,
has been
look,
destroyed.
sure, you can't cash out, but it is gambling because it is preying on all the
Let's see
and
who
that
has
is
the
ultimately
last
what is,
laugh.
getting you to just put money, in. Now, for the hyper TLDR, which I think is the way to do this,
Yeah.
you've got the brain chemical dopamine that is typically linked with like pleasure and motivation.
Give life
Our
right?
turret is
And
under
evolutionary,
attack.
it's
Not
intended
magic to
to motivate us
life.
to do things that are for short-term good. It's while it's a large part of why you actually feel good when you're doing stuff that is good.
I know
Our
who
turret
I
has
It's pretty
been
strong for
destroyed.
having
And
negative
you will
feelings
soon
as
know
well,
as well.
which is why people turn to these positive things, like anxiety or other sort of low moods. And almost everything that you want to do,
Ally has been
like
slain.
that releases some. Now that could mean smelling some fresh bread, eating sugar, eating fat, playing video games.
Ally has been
For some
slain.
people, that ends up being
You have slain an enemy.
materials. Think about the struggles that Terry Crews had
Yeah.
younger in his life. For other people, it's stimulants, it's
Our
gambling,
turret
it's
is
just
under attack.
buying loads of shit that people can't afford.
Yeah.
Scrolling Twitter and Reddit, always just pulling the slot machine on
Our
Twitter to
turret
see the
has been
newest set of,
destroyed.
algorithms shown to you tweets. Or
Let's
just
see who has
mindlessly
the last
watching
laugh.
loads of YouTube videos. You're not even enjoying them. 5 hours later, you won't even remember them, but you're just stuck there in a stupor. For some people, that stupor.
The more your fear lightning.
Killing spree.
Yeah.
Your team
Now, there's a
destroyed a
biological
turret.
process called homeostasis. The brain tries to chemically normalize things.
Would you like to
basically
have
kinda
a drink with
tolerance
me?
Thing. So if your dopamine receptors are just kind of like firing all day, then what can happen is you can have some down regulation. This apparently also happens. And I think
Let's see who has the last laugh.
Shut down.
think about how you feel
My
when
magic.
you are sleep deprived.
Is
Absolutely. It's such a
out of
case of
control.
things are supposed to be what we consider kind of fun in a way.
Yeah.
So much of it boils down to dopamine. There's so many of it, right? Because we are.
An enemy has been slain. Team destroyed a
There's
turret.
so many complicated things going on in the brain. That,
Your
like,
team
obviously there's
destroyed
whole
a
social
turret.
reasons for gambling, because it's not just dopamine. Obviously, people want to win money. People want to, even just people want to hang out physically. People like the parasocial relationships of gambling streams. Because
Would you like to
lots
have
of
a
else
drink
excitement.
with me?
That's like a little social connection. All of those different things, all kind of, it's all the same fundamental thing. At the deep core, it's not everything,
Yeah.
but it's the same fundamental thing. And I think a good example is it's any stimulant drug. Let's say the reason
enemy
those
has
feel
been
great is
slain.
because it's just unlimited. And that's why you'll see people.
You have slain an enemy. An ally has slain Lord.
I know who I am, and you will see. Lightning strike!
If you're using these massive high correlations of all these things, then another person happens when
Request backup.
all of the dopamine.
You destroyed a turret.
Okay, fuck it, Sherry. Couldn't be happy all day long. I don't know, how do I turn that up again? Have to turn to something stronger?
Yeah, exactly. So some stakes, like with gambling,
Yep.
maybe for some people it could be a play to earn thing,
Yeah.
where there's a bit more dopamine because they know they can cash
The more
out.
your fear
Maybe
grows,
watching Dr.
the
Fate's
smaller
content
you
on
become.
this.
An ally has been
Lightning
slain.
My magic
On exact
is
function if you
out of control.
and he's not some anti-gamer. He's not a gamer at all.
Killing spree.
So we actually do need to think about these things though, because so many things are trying to target us with so many just different methods, that actually do really try to just hit the button in our brain. Now, when we talk about video games turning to gambling-like mechanics, well, hey, have you ever heard of Mr. BS?
Initiate
Skinner and the
retreat.
Can't pronounce your name, but
box, you
thanks for
know?
the follow, I guess.
Right, the variable rewards, all of that. Here's a little Skinner
Am I on
box,
screen?
food
Yeah,
dispenser,
I'm
rats in
on
it.
camera.
Give life to
you know
Oh my
what
God,
it is.
these
We talked
games
about
are
Not
terrible.
magic
Also,
to
the
life.
food version is the nice version. It's a lot of the time they use cooking.
An enemy has been slain.
Yeah. And, even just compare like the dopamine feeling of a free run of
Would you like to have a drink
a
with me?
model versus a fully paid one, right? So there's the free one. Okay. Or sorry, that's the paid one. Even you can see like, oh my god, look how
Let's
much
see who has the last lightning.
You have
Of course,
slain an
people will then
enemy.
get dopamined up on this, and suddenly those oranges won't be good. They will
Your
want
team
white,
destroyed
because that
a
indicates
turret.
5-star gem.
The more your fear grows,
Which then
the
goes back
smaller
to, of
you
course,
become.
our friend Rolf talking about the theoretically near infinite
You have slain an
$1,000
enemy.
maximum spend, not $500 maximum spend.
Give
That's
life
how these
to
games
magic.
are,
Yeah.
Not
can play
magic
after this.
to
Here's
life.
another one. Is this
Oh my God,
I forget the
seriously.
name of the
Killing spree.
exposed.
Oh yeah.
Just there you go. Want to sit down? Oh, you won 3 additional spins. But what happens is, they see the big reactions, and even though there's a disclaimer at the start of the video, people will see, the person they're watching make all these big loud noises, of excitement here. Mega big win.
Ultra
You know,
big win.
$3 to $45,000 slot session. Craziest slot win of all time. Everybody thinks some kid's gonna
And
do
you
when they
will
see that.
soon know as well.
Just reactions to it. Ultra big win. Now we're at $22,000.
Yeah, it goes up to 43.
The more your fear
Killing spree!
Massive.
Slain. Ally has been. Our turret is under attack.
Starting to start to scream. And that's the thing with all this
Give
good stuff.
life
and that's why I
to
included
magic,
the video of the,
not
the
magic
podcast
to
from
life.
Vampire Survivors there. Because
Our turret has been destroyed.
but it's the same
Let's see who
fundamental
has
thing,
the last
where
laugh.
getting that shit feels great. You don't get it all the
Would
time.
you like to have a
Mega
But
kill!
when you get a 5, you're like, oh, hell yes.
Yep.
And
Oh, that's my team.
the same
My team
thing
is
that's happening.
dead.
And I'm not saying that's a bad
Fucking
thing. to
team
do.
is dead.
I'm saying that's completely fine. But it is a case of one of them is attached to how do we get you to give us your money. The other is
You guys did what?
Shut down!
and that's the thing where it's the same tactic. So you can see how one person who likes one is substantially more likely to like the other, especially when they get used to the
I know
big dopamine
who
hits of
I am,
a really good
and
Vampire
you
Survivors
will
run.
soon know as
And it's
well.
just not doing it. That's a bit of an insane comparison. But it's like you could see how the same.
Would you like
underpinning
to have a
mechanics
drink
actually
with
work.
me?
I think it's kind of worth understanding that and knowing that something's actually going to, something could go wrong if you're not kind of careful. I think.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, Zynga, they were big into hiring data scientists and behavioral
Give
scientists
life
try actually
to
understand
magic,
what's really going on here.
not
What's
magic
going on
to
with the
life.
world getting better. All of mobile gaming is essentially based on everything we talked about today. Can beat into MMOs, the whole 40% chance to get loot.
Let's see.
Mega kill!
It's
Lightning.
fundamentally the same thing. They could give you
Enemy has been
every
slain.
5
Out
dungeons.
of
They could do
control.
it. They could do that. But no. They do 40.
An ally has
Does
been
that
slain.
reinforce you better? You enjoy it more, generally. But sometimes you maybe don't enjoy it because it's kind of underpinning your psychology as opposed to working in tandem with it. It's the same way dopamine for doing something cool and enjoyable and like meaningful is great. But dopamine for
Yeah,
It'd be the
so
same.
I think the challenge for game designers, like, we're not saying you can never have dopamine.
No,
That's no, we are absolutely
no,
categorically not
never.
saying that. What we are saying though is it's an interesting problem, and it's
Yeah.
it's also an interesting thing to actually have to manage in a game. Because as an example,
The more your
Absolutely.
fear grows, the
eventually
smaller
hit won't be
you
as strong for
become.
people. So it's like, okay, you could design with Titan Forging a short-term, very cool rewarding
Initiate
thing for
retreat.
Wahoo experience. But then what happens is people get used to it, they get a bit burnt out from it, and then they start to get very frustrated at the system.
I know
because
who
it was
I
short-term
am,
super strong had
and
great
you
results,
will
but
soon know as
long-term,
well.
it was not sustainable. So it's like, how do you actually make a game that's sustainable in a world where other games
ally
are
has
just going to
been
go super
slain.
hard on the short-term, immediate sense of feeling great? Well, okay, then those games are going to steal your audience. when you
inhibitor
get them
turret
back
is
when you get
under
bored of
attack.
other games.
Killing
Yeah.
spree.
My magic
So I think I really
is
like two kind of
out of control.
one is be super careful of gambling because it's the exact same as playing video games. It feeds on the same stuff. So I think as an industry, we should look at gambling and go, that is basically our easy game, in a sense. That's a really fun activity that hits in a lot of brain chemistry and brain psychology to make it feel really good.
Ally has been
But it
slain.
has the negativity attached. It has all these problems coming out of it because it relies on real money as opposed to being a safe corner.
The enemy has slain.
The industry as a whole shouldn't be afraid of gambling like they are. I mean, I
Request backup.
should have went and searched for it, but someone said there was an interview with a developer. and
Would
they
you like
admitted
to have a drink with
consulting
me?
with people from Vegas
Oh, God.
on how to get the.
Request backup.
That's the stuff we should be avoiding. That's the stuff.
Give life to magic. Lightning.
Strike! I
Enemy has been slain.
I'm probably looking for it after this.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
That's shocking. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not surprising, but it's
Yeah,
shocking.
it's not.
The more
it's not
your
actually
fear
fucking surprising.
grows,
It's like, oh yeah,
the smaller you
that's-
become.
makes complete sense. And the other point, realistically, is that I think that what games are doing by chasing that short term is the
Let's
equivalent
see
of
who has the last
the US
laugh.
did putting, well, what everyone did. putting
Our inhibitor turret.
Lightning.
Shut down. Enemy
Unless that's not research. That would be bad because we have to make the profit from it now.
I know who I
How,
am,
you know,
and
this is
you
not just
will
US, I can
soon
only
know
really
as
speak for the
well.
UK, but asbestos in
Yeah.
all your houses, like, what does this do? Oh yeah, if you breathe it in, you're really likely to get lung cancer. Fuck it, fill the whole country with it. But just didn't know that at the time. They weren't thinking about the long-term effects. It's like, I think everyone knows the whole thing about lead and makeup.
Request backup.
Women going around with lead all over their faces, wondering why they're getting lead poisoning. And that's just a case of people were chasing the short term without thinking of the long term effects.
Request backup.
That is like what happens
Our turret is under attack.
because it ends up being hard to do an L1. It's hard to do a Starfield. Something because a lot of games are just trying to be way more,
Predatory.
you know.
Our base is under
Give
attack.
life.
Our
Magic.
turret is under
Because
attack.
ultimately, this is a young industry. So much of this additional monetization only started in the last 15 years or so. But then the crazy thing,
Request backup.
the really deep predatory stuff.
Would you like to have a drink? Lightning?
Shut down.
We just have to defend what normal is, because if we let normal slip,
Let's see who has the last laugh.
kind of shocking, but I think this is the case if you see a lot of young people.
The more your fear grows, lightning?
Shut down.
People our generation TikTok.
I know who I am,
Initiate retreat.
and you will soon know
And it's
as
like,
well.
Ask someone for whom the vast majority of their media consumption is TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. Ask them to watch Lord of the Rings.
Good luck.
And then that means like, okay, well, how do you get Lord of the Rings to happen?
You don't. Easy, simple. It is now a substantially more niche product to have something that lasts 2.5, 3 hours and is a slow
then
burn.
What happens is we start getting into like Rise of Skywalker, another movie
Yeah.
that apparently is very similar to Rise of Skywalker. In
The
its,
more
like,
your
pacing
fear grows,
is,
the
where,
smaller
it's like, these
you
are less
become.
scenes and these are just fucking TikToks back to back. Is the new Jurassic World movie,
Oh, that would make
which
sense.
like
yeah.
I know who
I think
I
it seems
am,
to be getting good
and
audience
you
ratings
will
basically
soon know
because
as
it has
well.
so much bing bing wahoo, right? It's just there's some incomprehensible, meaningless bullshit.
Would
that
you
looks
like to
really
have a drink?
Ally has been slain.
Lightning?
Killing spree.
eroded. You look at movie critics, people are thinking about, well, what is cinema?
Let's see who has the
What
last
are the
laugh.
things that are deeply impactful character moments? They're all looking at me like, this is completely devoid of any substance. This is awful. What's happening?
Yeah, this is 2 hours of dopamine rushes
Give life to
by
magic,
design, as
not
opposed to
magic to
This is
life.
something that will give you a little bit of dopamine, but also you'll come out of it and your serotonin will be nice. Now you'll be all
Request backup.
Yeah, so I think these are just things to think about, and certainly, you know, if you're just feeling yourself,
I know who. Lightning?
Down.
standing there
Strike.
and enjoying
My
things
magic
around you, it's really
is
you're like,
out of control.
Well,
Yeah.
YouTube channel. A lot of these streamers, you'll see actual interviews with them.
actually doing stuff on TikTok recently, so talking about and how there's this like TikTok movement on TikTok where they're using the platform to highlight how it feels to actually use TikTok. There's one example that I was talking about where it was, someone's lying in bed and they're just like staring.
The enemy has slain.
There's just like
Enemy has
constantly
been
blasting in the
slain.
room and really loud noises. And it's like, this is how it feels trying to sleep after scrolling TikTok for 4 hours.
Yeah.
And he explains very, from his perspective as obviously being actually medically trained and being a psychologist, to talk about like how that physically happens in terms of how to deal with it. And I think the answer for a lot of people is throw your phone in the river. Throw your phone in the river and
The
go
more your
outside and
fear
stare at the grass
grows,
for about
the
6
smaller
minutes.
Ally
you
has been
become.
slain. Enemy has
We're
been
getting,
slain. Enemy has been slain.
Ethics people,
Yeah.
you know, who I guess just try to warn about things in Google and Twitter or whatever and get fired.
And this isn't even you.
But, like, we kind of need those people there, because if you just have
Slain an enemy.
where the crack to go up,
Initiate
Who
retreat.
has the last laugh?
We really need to think about the means rather than the end here for
Our
some.
inhibitor
Big
turret
fear.
is under attack.
So
Our turret has been destroyed.
just, I think there's a lot of great resources there if any of the downsides here are the sort of thing that maybe you feel like you're feeling. Like even if you're playing World of Warcraft and you're like, why
Would
are
you
the
like to
boss
have a
dungeons
drink
not
with
fun
me?
anymore, and why am I angry at the vault every week? I actually think Dr. K is going to have the stuff for you.
Yep.
So that's our final recommendation. Have a good day. Twitch, get rid of the gambling. Man, that ain't cool. You guys don't want that.
You destroy the turret!
See ya.
Give life to magic, not magic to life.
Do you think all the YouTube guys' content on games takes some of the fun out of games?
Killing
Guys
spree!
call us anything. Martin,
Ally
that's a
has
very
been
good
slain.
Google
An enemy has been slain. Ally has been slain.
on that. It's about 20 minutes. That's usually exact. Ultimately, I believe it has taken away a lot of
The more your fear grows,
because
the smaller you
sometimes
become.
the fun in discovering the answer is the process of discovering the answer, not in telling people the other answer. Can we watch and react to it? We can. I think we can. Is this the new meta? Wait, you watching an ad on your own vid? Infinite money. Yep. Infinite cash. That's how this works.
Give life to magic, not magic to life.
You should be-
Request
Right,
backup!
have guides ruined MMO games? An MMO opinion.
Request backup!
Is this digital masturbation? Yes, in a way. What this is, allow me to explain.
Initiate retreat!
Lightning?
You have
It's
slain an
unfair
enemy!
or it's immoral that one YouTuber reacts to another YouTuber's video
Killing spree!
and gets money from it.
I know who I am, and you will soon know as well.
Mega kill!
Let's see who has the last laugh.
Don't worry, it's fine. I'm sorry. The amount of people in chat, I forget that when you put these in, it goes really loud.
Would you like to have a drink with me?
Yeah, sorry.
Allies is under attack!
Lightning?
Strike!
I know who I am.
Unstoppable!
Comments on this
know
video,
as well.
I won't see it. That's just a lie. If you've got a theory that you want to discuss, message me.
Give life to
Don't
magic,
put it in the comments.
not magic to life.
Remember when we had a Patreon list that we could use? Mute Factorio in the background. Why is he disassembling my wall, Callum? Callum has disassembled the wall that I had and replaced it with a different looking wall. But the real one is this. Hang on.
My God.
Okay, that is now me being safe. I am 100% safe. Apart from the fact there were no bullets in those guns. So let's just stick some bullets in the guns and now we're safe. Right, let's go back to doing some stuff.
Today I'd like to address how guides can sometimes ruin games.
I think they can. I think he's going on to something. I think he's going to provide roughly 18 minutes and 44 seconds of well-researched facts. And in no way
This video was brought to you by Brilliant, and the first 200 people to sign up using the link below will get 20% off an annual premium subscription. On Monday evening, the UK government published its long-awaited Northern Ireland Protocol Bill, explicitly announcing its intention to unilaterally amend an international treaty with the EU. As you'd expect, this hasn't gone down too well on the continent, with the EU starting legal proceedings against the UK for what they see as a violation of international law. Now, while things probably won't come to a head for a few more months, the bill still needs to make it through Parliament after all. If EU-UK relations continue to deteriorate, a trade war between the two certainly isn't impossible. On Tuesday, we made a video explaining the entire proceedings, and we ended that video by posing a question. Who would win that trade war? The UK or the EU? In this video, we're going to be taking a look at that hypothetical trade war, how it would pan out, and who would win. By the way, if you didn't know already, we have a separate TLDR UK channel where we discuss British politics, as well as TLDR US and TLDR Global. They're all linked below. Anyway, before we get to the trade war itself,
is the
let's
proof
explain
that
how
I'm
we
still
might
alive.
As we have mentioned, on Monday, the UK government published its much-anticipated Northern Ireland Protocol Bill. And if it passes, the bill will basically do two things. Unilaterally amend the Northern Ireland Protocol and give UK ministers further power to amend the protocol in the future. Now, that might sound a little confusing, so let's clarify the names of these two key pieces of legislation. This new UK bill is called the Northern Ireland Protocol Bill, and it's been drawn up to amend a section of the Brexit withdrawal agreement known as the Northern Ireland Protocol. This might get confusing. Anyway, the bill would unilaterally amend the protocol to reduce customs and regulatory checks, which the EU considers a threat to the integrity of the single market, retake control of Northern Ireland's VAT and subsidy regime, which is limited by EU law under the original protocol, and get rid of the ECJ in dispute settlements. Obviously, all three of these things directly contradict the protocol. And if that wasn't bad enough for the EU, the bill also gives UK ministers sweeping powers to further amend the protocol in the future. According to Section 15 of the bill, a minister can unilaterally amend not just the protocol, but also any related provision of the EU withdrawal agreement for, quote, permitted purposes.
Welcome to Mobile
Permitted
Legends!
purposes means any of these 9 criteria. As you
5
can see,
seconds till the
these
enemy
permitted
reaches the
purposes
battlefield.
are restricted to
Smash
the
them!
They include safeguarding
All troops deployed!
I'm here
safeguarding
to stay.
the Belfast Agreement, but even the functioning of the Belfast Agreement,
Request backup!
violence, whatever that means. In practice, this basically gives UK ministers
This void
unlimited scope to
consumes
unilaterally
me.
amend the protocol. And as I mentioned, yes, this hasn't gone down too well with the EU. We've opened up
Forget
new legal
is to forgive.
and the starting action began in 2021 for another alleged protocol.
If only happiness could last.
It's yet to even become law yet. But they're clearly a
Request backup!
as a statement of intent from the UK
No one
government.
runs their fate.
The European Commission
No
also
one
published
does.
2 command papers setting out their counter-proposals for reducing customs and phytosanitary checks, but nothing on VAT, state subsidies, or the role of the ECJ. Clearly then, the two sides are pretty far apart on this issue, and negotiations are beginning to look futile, which means
To
if the
forget
bill passes in
is
its
to
current form,
forgive.
the EU will likely resort to extreme measures. For all
First blood!
Firstly, they could scrap the entire Brexit agreement via Article 779, although that requires a year's notice. Secondly, they could suspend the deal via Article 521, although that requires a 9-month notice period.
If only happiness
Third,
could
perhaps
last.
the most extreme option, is suspending access to EU waters via Article 506, which requires
Oblivion
7
doesn't
days
grant you
notice.
peace.
If the EU decided to go and they didn't back down, then we could be looking at a global trade war between
This
sides.
void
Now, we could be
consumes me.
You have been slain.
I'm
still be a surprise breakthrough in negotiation, or the bill might be watered down by the Lords, or the EU might decide that trade retaliation would risk undermining European unity on Ukraine.
Enemy has
It's
been
also possible
slain.
that in the meantime, Boris Johnson might be replaced by a more moderate leader. Nonetheless, it's true to say that a trade war is now looking more likely than any time.
Memories are who we are.
And that this is, well, pretty interesting stuff. So, what would actually happen in the trade war? Well, to answer that question, there's two aspects worth considering. Economics.
An ally has been slain.
Let's start with the economics. And it's not good news for Britain, because the UK is not in a strong position economically. For one, it's far more dependent on EU goods
This
than
void
the EU is on UK goods.
Consumes
The
me.
EU accounts for about 40% of the UK's total trade, while the UK accounts for just 10% of the EU's total trade. And Britain's already suffering from some of the highest inflation in Europe. Therefore, tariffs and trade restrictions would only push prices higher, causing yet more economic pain. When it comes to the politics, though, this one's a little more complicated. On the one hand, Johnson and his government are in a pretty weak position at the moment, having only narrowly survived a no-confidence vote last week. So, a trade war with the EU might be costly,
No one
especially
outruns
given
their
that
fate. No
heavy
one does.
tariffs on politically valuable exports like farming, fishing, and car manufacturing. And it's reasonable to
forget
expect these things.
to
Exactly
forgive.
what the EU did
Enemy has been slain.
years ago, when they focused their tariffs on politically sensitive exports
An ally
like
has
Harley
been
Davidson
slain.
bikes, Levi's jeans, and Japanese whiskey, the political pressure on Trump. However, despite the potential political cost, Johnson will probably open an EU-UK trade war.
If
will
only
reinvigorate the
happiness
Brexit
could last.
in 2019. And if Johnson feels like a trade war,
I'm here to stay.
the right wing of the Conservative Party and his Brexit-loving base, he might have the political capital to ride it out, and even enthusiasm
This
to pull
void
Britain into a trade war
consumes me.
with his family. There are reasons to be skeptical here.
Request backup.
Johnson did claim to have got it done back
If
in
only
2019.
happiness could
And
last.
even the most progressive wings of the electorate aren't going to be as keen to showing Brussels who's wrong, but involves keeping inflation well above.
No one outruns their
Ultimately, though, the UK might be worse affected by a trade war. It would be costly for both sides and create yet another risk in EU-UK relations.
Oblivion
At a time
doesn't
of rising
grant you
inflation
peace.
and a war on the continent, this really isn't what Europe needs. Which is why both
Our turret has been destroyed. Our turret has been destroyed.
And on the UK side, that will probably involve not routine international
This
law.
void
When it comes to a trade war,
Our turret is under
good
attack.
grasp on maths and science. So I think all of Europe needs a membership to Brilliant. Brilliant is an online STEM learning
long
The
platform.
enemy
You
has
can learn
slain the
everything you need to
turtle.
know to better understand the modern world. In fact, that's kind of what TLDR is all about too.
Our turret is under attack.
Scary from the outside,
Enemy shut down. Double kill.
the world's less stable place. And understanding STEM better could mean all
I'm
kinds of
here
things
to stay.
to help you thrive at work, improve your grades at school, or even just help you learn something exciting. And new. No matter what your reason is, taking some time to learn is brilliant. Is a whole lot more
Oblivion
fun than the boring
doesn't
computer
grant
science
you
lectures
peace.
I had to take at university. There's no long talks and no text.
Request
It's all
backup.
about interactive experiences that have been put together by experts in their field to help you learn.
Memories are.
So if you take your next step with STEM,
Feel what
You
are.
have slain an enemy.
brilliant.org/TLDR. And the first thing that you do so will get 50% off an annual premium subscription. Thanks
This
for
void consumes me.
Your team destroyed a turret. Killing spree. An ally has been slain. An ally has been slain.
We have chosen the position in life in which we can most of all work for mankind. No burdens can bow us down because they
Our
are
turret is under attack.
we shall experience no petty
feel.
limited personal joys, but our happiness will belong to you. Our
Our
deeds will
turret
live on
has
quietly
been
but
destroyed.
perpetually at work, and over our ashes will be shed the tears of noble people.
Our turret is under attack.
Angles were philosophers, political theorists, and
Initiate
economists
retreat.
responsible for writing the Communist
I'm
Manifesto,
here
which
to
is today
stay.
probably the most widely recognised text outlining a system for a communal economy. An economy where work is done to fulfill the needs of one's community rather than
If
satiate
only
personal
happiness
desires.
could last.
Where goods and services are distributed by needs rather than by
Request
means.
backup.
An economy
Our
where people
turret
could
is
not
under
rest on their
attack.
laurels within the land
Enemy
or
has
capital
been
owners
slain.
to get by without ever needing
Enemy has been
any
slain.
personal effort. This system lies in direct contrast to the other extreme of the economic spectrum, which is laissez-faire capitalism. Literally translating from French, let it be, pretty much sums up this economic system. It advocates for limited alone, entirely to do its thing.
Killing
Because no
spree.
government can allocate resources as effectively as the free market can. Both of
Our
these
turret
opposing
is under
theories
attack.
are very extreme, and, for what it's worth, don't exist in any modern economies anywhere around the world today, despite
Our
what
turret
some
has
nations
been
might have you
destroyed.
believe. Nonetheless, they are still important to
ally
understand
has
because
been
the best
slain.
way to wrap your head around any spectrum, be it political, economic, colour, is to understand the extremities of that spectrum and place the more widely accepted ideology somewhere in
Memories
between those
are.
two extremes. So, what are the economic arguments for and against a communist economic system? What are the economic arguments for and against
I'm
a
here
Mega kill. An ally
some
has
examples
been
of these
slain.
extreme systems actually working throughout history. This episode of Economics Explained was made
No one.
possible by our exclusive Q&A sessions, which now held every Saturday at 9:30 Eastern Standard Time.
forget
Please consider supporting our
is
channel
to
at
forgive.
patreon.com/economicsexplained. Amongst all of these conflicting ideologies of communism versus unfettered capitalism, and even more mild
We are
disagreements
just
like changing
vessels
control measures
for the
versus limited
non-stopping
government
time.
it must be remembered that we are still figuring this all out. Capitalism as we know it today only really first emerged into the world in the 16th
Our
and
turret
17th
is under
century,
attack.
and even then, this was only in places like the Netherlands and England that were comparatively well built in the world.
Memories
Nations
are.
were up until recently still operating under a system of rigid class structures based on birthrights and land.
Initiate retreat.
This divide was accelerated when the Industrial Revolution evolved, and all
I'm
of this
here
made a
to
few
stay.
men start thinking, maybe this isn't the best way to do this.
Initiate retreat.
Maybe the world will
Ally
ready
has
for a
been
revolution of the commons.
Glory.
Request backup.
Humans have unlimited desire and only limited resources.
You
to fulfill those
destroyed a
desires.
turret.
This is true on an individual, community, national. I want a new Porsche 911 Turbo, but I don't have the resources to fulfill that desire. On a national level, most governments would love to use their citizens free healthcare and world-class infrastructure while also reducing costs.
Shut down.
But they don't have the resources to do so. Of course, these
Our
issues
turret
can
is
be
under
overcome by
attack.
increasing resources. Let's say everybody watching, liking,
No
and
one
subscribing to that
outruns
new
their
Porsche,
fate.
or a nation
No
finding
one
a treasure
does.
trove of natural resources to fund all of those things without any taxes. But eventually, humans get used to this new normal.
Our
they
turret
want
is under
more.
attack.
What this means is that the central economic problem
Our
has
inhibitor
no
turret
solution,
is under attack.
but instead, it just gives out more questions. These
An
questions
ally has been
what
slain.
should be produced, how should it be produced, and who should it be
Enemy has
for?
been slain.
If these questions can be answered, the problem isn't solved per se, but a workable solution is found. Now, Karl Marx See, the world in the 1800s was getting wealthier. Steam power, railroads, telegrams, all enabled business
forget.
be done
Enemy
and
has
wealth
been slain. Double kill.
some 100 years earlier. But all the while,
Our
living
inhibitor
conditions
turret is
had
under
not
attack.
improved for average workers.
Our
Pollution
turret is
cities
under
lined with
attack.
soul-crushing
Long
factories,
night.
they had probably
Our
gone
turret
back.
has been destroyed.
This was because average workers did not control the means of
I'm
production.
here to stay.
Land, labour and capital is what is needed to make anything. Up until the Industrial Revolution, farmland and land have been the most important pieces of this
Memories
puzzle.
are
Kings and
who we
lords and
are.
nobilities employees owned the land, and the serfs worked the land with their labour. The advent of modern manufacturing suddenly meant that capital,
No one
which is things like
outruns their
machinery,
fate.
also
No
became
one.
a important factor, and this was primarily
Team destroyed a turret.
labour was made
If
far more
only
efficient by
happiness could last.
labourers were not
Feel what I
so
feel.
they didn't really benefit from it.
Shut down.
In this sense, the aristocracy
Mega
they
kill.
produced primarily more factories and machines to make factory owners even richer, and after that, maybe some consumer goods. How should it be produced? It should be produced in said factories with a
Ally has
combination of heavy
been slain. Enemy
machinery
has
and
been
low-paid
slain.
labourers. And for whom should it be produced? Well, the people that own a factory, those orders.
Unstoppable.
These answers did not suit the authors of the Communist Manifesto at all, and they argued that
Oblivion
workers needed to
doesn't
leverage
grant
their
you
position
peace.
as one of the crucial factors of production.
Our turret has been destroyed.
Individual bargaining.
You have slain an enemy.
Work was not easy to get, and if an individual worker demanded more pay or better conditions, they would be laughed out of
Double kill.
work by a seemingly endless line of eager employees. If these workers acted as a single community though, they would have much more bargaining power because it's a lot harder to replace all of the workers in a factory than it is to replace just one. This in many ways is similar to modern unions, where workers will strike for better pay or conditions.
Memories are
This wasn't so simple in the 1800s. Factory owners still had a lot more negotiation even there was a higher pool of factory workers. Even if
Killing spree.
organised industry-wide strikes, these factory owners would just sit back on their estates,
Double kill.
wind their operations down, and wait for workers to starve into submission. Worker protections, welfare, and labour laws were definitely not on the side of workers in this time period. So,
Ally has slain
a
Lord.
revolution. Marx didn't necessarily advocate for a revolution in his writing, but said it was more of an inevitability. Workers would only accept so much before they forcefully made themselves the owners of land and capital.
We are just
Your team destroyed a turret.
Land and capital out of the hands of the few who own it and divided equitably among the
no one outruns their
The answer to the question
Legendary.
is it produced
Double kill.
primarily more factories and machines to make factory owners even richer.
Memories
That may be
Team
true.
destroyed a turret.
The only difference this time was that the factory owners were the people, at least in theory. Nonetheless, most nations
Destroyed a turret. Your team destroyed a turret.
how should it be produced? From people
You destroyed a turret.
who does what based on and this is actually not too dissimilar from a capitalist system. It's just that instead of a company or jobbing for you, it's a central labour department. And
Victory.
finally, the big one. For whom should these goods be produced? They should be allocated to everybody according to their needs. If a single mother has 10 children and no way to work, she should get a bigger house with more amenities than a single person because the doctor doesn't need as much space. Now, of course, this is a big sticking point where communism starts to unravel, but it's not in the way that you might think. Worker motivation looks to be the big problem here, right? Why would someone put all that time and effort into studying to become a doctor if they would be given better amenities by just having lots of children? And in a sense, this seems true. But the actual abundance of slack labour, as it came to be known, was actually pretty minimal in places like the Soviet Union or early communist China. The reason was that workers were motivated in different ways. Ironically enough, Friedrich von Mises, a famous Austrian economist, a school of economics that stands in complete opposition to communism and advocates heavily for the free market, actually gives some insight on this. Cyclic profits are the benefits received by an individual for doing something that can't be quantified. Winning a game of football, donating to charity, or being recognised as a leader in your respective field all give people a sense of pride and accomplishment in their work. If anything, this could be thought of as the warm fuzzies, and This has been shown to be a stronger motivator than money alone. Think about it like this. Most of you watching are paid to go to work and do a job. Your motivation at that job is to work as little as possible without getting fired and potentially work hard enough to get recognised for a promotion. A living salary is a fantastic motivator for doing the bare minimum, like getting out of bed and getting to work on time, but a terrible motivator for doing much beyond that. If the fundamentals of economics are to be believed, it actually incentivises people to work as little as possible, the maximal possible output for the minimal possible work, i.e. getting paid for the minimal possible input. Now, discretionary effort is what makes all the difference here, and there are many ways to get it, be that amazing management, personal recognition for achievements, or nationwide devotion to a common cause. All of these will result in psychic profit, putting in more than the bare minimum. All of this is to say that worker motivation wasn't really the Achilles heel of communism. It was actually more so the decisions made around what to produce. In a communist system, the laws of supply and demand don't set prices. The government does. The government decides what is produced and for whom it is produced. But without this supply and demand, these government planners lose valuable insight into what people actually want. They can't get up-to-date information about what consumers need, and as a result, there is often a surplus of one thing and shortages of others. This is before the added complications of time preferences and subjective value. To compensate, citizens create black markets to trade the things that governments don't provide, which destroys the trust in the state. People no longer respect the idea that the strongest of parents fail to blame me. Needs. There are famous examples of these systems going awfully wrong, resulting in botched government policies like Mao's backyard furnaces and any number of the Soviet Union's 5-year plans. The reality is that human needs across an entire nation are so variable and diverse that no single agency can properly account for it, no matter how well staffed they are. The free market is just the most efficient way for people to vote on what is produced and for whom it is produced. Almost every communist nation eventually realises this, and that's why, of the 5 communist countries left in the world today, all of them have some system of free markets. For what it's worth, Marx actually realised this, and communism itself isn't actually an economic system, but rather a process that a country goes through to transition from a capitalist state to a social nation that answers the central economic questions with these answers. The problem was, of course, these answers were legendarily hard for any government to answer, and the extreme political ideologies that came along with most of these economic policies did not help this process at all. So, it's simple then. It looks like the more that the government interferes, the more that things go wrong. Maybe the solution is just to fully enable hands-off capitalism. Laissez-faire capitalism is the most extreme brand.
Welcome to Mobile
It
Legends!
advocates for governments to stay out of the economy entirely.
5 seconds till the enemy reaches the battlefield. Smash them!
Eliminated completely. Government
All
control,
troops
fiat
deployed.
currency, monetary policy,
Don't be in a rush to die, kid.
prejudice, and don't even dream of government-run industry. That is
Request backup!
the private sector. The argument is that in the long run,
frozen
private
ocean is
business
just our
industry
first
with a
stop.
profit
Initiate
will be
retreat!
the most efficient entities for producing the goods and services of an economy because their existence depends on it. What to produce, how to
Oh,
produce
run
it,
a
and who
shot
to produce
across
it
the
for.
bow.
You see, the answers to the economic questions sound simple,
Launch
but they
attack!
require understanding humans, and humans can be
Is this how you want to get
First blood!
Subjective preference is a term used to describe the way values gives economists some insight into how people don't always want what looks most logical. Consider this.
I'm all
What has
mariner's
more value?
nightmare.
A vintage Lamborghini Miura or a Toyota Corolla? Well, almost all of you want
Ally
to
has
probably
been
say Lamborghini, right? Why did you say that? Because one costs a lot more, right? Even if you weren't into cars, you could sell a vintage Lamborghini for more than buy all the Toyota Corollas you
I
want.
see it.
All that
I
being
take
said,
it.
the modern Toyota Corolla is objectively a better car in almost every nominal way.
Fear of
It's more
water makes you
practical,
drown
more fuel
quicker.
efficient, more comfortable, more reliable, and depending on the model, probably faster too. Even beyond that, more technical expertise go into producing a modern Corolla than going to
I failed once, and once only.
Lamborghini demands the higher price because people give it much more subjective value. Therefore,
By the way,
can never truly know how much something is worth until people have demonstrated their preference for it. These two cars are extreme examples of this, but subjective value is really important for a robot.
the ocean sees through your cowardice
To the
and
economic
fear.
questions: what to produce, how to produce it, and who to produce it for. Well, if a business can produce something that costs less, similar to human beings, they should definitely produce that thing first before making something more difficult. If a communist government gets this wrong, so be it. We have produced an imitation of beef, tractors and corn and presses. You get and work with what you're given. Since there is no consumer feedback, communist nations can only assume that something that takes more industrial effort
enemy
to
has
produce
been
is of
slain.
a greater value, which is of course. If a business gets any of this wrong, they are no business and they lose their customers to a business that doesn't get these
no
answers right. Then kind of now, for regular and attentive viewers, you may start to say, well, this sounds very similar to what the Austrian School of Economics advocated for in the last video in this series.
Launch
You would be
attack!
absolutely correct. The Austrian school falls broadly into the
raise
line of laissez-faire
defenses.
capitalism.
Again!
Even the most staunchly free market
ally
figureheads in
has
the
been
school
slain.
still know that there is a place for government. Things like national defense and
I failed once, and once only.
very, very edge of free market capitalism is the granddaddy
The
of
enemy has slain the turtle.
I don't ride the
capitalism.
tide.
Is an economic
I
philosophy
tame
that
it.
advocates for the complete removal of any state in favour of market.
Sharp way!
Government just
Oh, I see it. I
Instead,
take it.
everybody would become completely independent agents. Now, of course, the first logical thought is that this would be complete anarchy, and even Murray Rothbard, the Austrian economist that founded this economic idea,
An ally has been
there is
slain.
likely to be some level of violence if this kind of system was introduced overnight. But long term, the self-interest of people to accumulate wealth and resources themselves would outweigh the motivation for war.
Oars,
because
by the way.
destruction caused by this would almost inevitably be a lose-lose. Now, big disclaimer time, most economists, myself included, argue
The
that this
frozen
defense
ocean is
is
just
pretty
our
weak,
first stop.
but maybe that's okay, because people can incorporate private military into their way of living. Taken to its logical extreme, this would be almost land without government, every man for themselves. But this causes issues in the sense that mankind does really well.
Fear of water
collectively.
makes you drown
Remember
quicker.
Adam Smith and the problem of the pin? No one man can wake up in the morning and make a single pin. That would require mining metal, refining that metal, forging and sharpening it. All
The
of which would
ocean
take
sees through your
man
cowardice
a lot of
and
time
fear.
and a lot of effort. In a healthy and functioning economy, though, people can just divide this labour and trade the profits of the final product to make everybody wealthier. But this might be a little bit more difficult in an every man for himself scenario. All of that being said, we can assume that eventually people will form corporations or guilds or communities or whatever you want to call it, just don't call it a country.
Me sharp way.
Maybe all protected by a communal security force and probably right?
Don't be in the rush to die.
Hypothetically being an element of choice may be made through borders of different working communities. For example, someone might be a member of a blue construction community. They work in a blue factory, and if they are ever threatened, they call their blue security emergency services. For the privilege of doing so, they pay a portion of their income to
Is
the
this how
blue
you wanna
central
get shot?
authority. But one day, our hypothetical worker wakes
The
up
enemy has slain the turtle.
low taxes, better working conditions, and a stronger security force, so they decide to take their
I'll
labour
run a
instead.
shot across the
Our
bow.
modern state-run capitalist
Ally has been
area, this would cause many issues.
Is this how you wanna get shot?
Even before you consider getting a working visa or citizenship, country. In a perfect anarcho-capitalistic world, to move from the blue construction community to the red construction community without having to move at all. In fact, the whole process should.
Destroy the turret!
There is actually technically an example of this today. It's obviously not a real community or country or whatever you want to call it, but this system is remarkably similar to Australia running of Eve Online. So go watch our video series on that if you want to learn more. Some of the prevailing thought amongst economists is that this theory will never work. Eventually, these communities will just draw defined borders, expand their territory, assert dominance over less organised working communities, and in the words of Rick Sanchez, if nothing else, the logical string of capitalism.
I see it,
Our turret has been destroyed.
Communism and laissez-faire capitalism, along with all of the sub-ideologies they encompass, are at extreme opposite ends of the economic spectrum.
I failed one, and one soul.
Ally has been slain. Ally has been slain.
That doesn't mean that there aren't takeaways from both of the teachings of these systems.
Your team
In
destroyed
the
the
world
turret.
today, realise that everything should be used in moderation. The government controls the recipe for disaster, but letting the free market take the wheel is equally as reckless. Some things governments do really well. They provide public goods, provide national defence, and offer security to those that don't have utility in a pure system of unfettered capitalism. But all the same, there are things that
Request
governments do
backup.
terribly. Producing goods and services, leave that up to the
I don't
business
ride
whose
the tide,
existence literally
I
depends
tame
on
it.
Hi guys, I hope you enjoyed the latest video. If you did, please consider liking and subscribe. This video is made possible by
attack!
over on Patreon, so if you enjoy these videos, please consider supporting the channel like these awesome people. Thanks guys.
Turret has been slain. Enemy has been slain. Shut down. Double kill.
Give a presentation, so I will, because sometimes I like to do as I'm told, not very often.
May reign commences again!
Your team destroyed the turret.
Don't be in a rush to die!
Shut down.
Allow me to begin with a slightly different question. Have you noticed how in the last few decades the quality of politicians has tumbled? Not just for God's sake, when I became a politician in 2015. No, but seriously, there is
I'm all Mariner's nightmare.
in
Our
the
turret is
rhetoric,
under
in the
attack.
capacity of politicians to inspire, and indeed, in
Fear
the
of
power
water
that they
makes
have.
you drown quicker!
Now, I don't believe that this is due to the DNA of humanity.
The ocean sees through Shockwave!
You have slain an enemy.
Back here!
And the political sphere. There used to be a time
Shut down.
there was one sphere. The sphere of
Enemy double.
it was impossible to separate power from political.
Slain an enemy. Double kill.
You have military power, produced political power,
Shut down.
There's no
Mega kill.
great mystery really as to why there was no
Wiped
economics
out.
150 years ago. Think about Harvard University did not have an economics department in the 19th century. Why? Because there was no need for it before capitalism came of age.
Request backup.
Before capitalism, the political and the economic sphere.
The frozen ocean just our heart!
Transformation society. Shifting to
Oh, I see it, I
Request backup.
evicted from the land, replaced by sheep because of the traditional roots that
All hands ahoy!
the wool and some commodities like wool, like steel, like
Shockwave!
the number of commodities prices that were determined at the level of the international routes. And all the other commodities were commodities. Goods.
Our turret is under attack.
So the
Ally has been slain.
incentive
Ally has been slain. Monster kill.
vegetables.
Initiate retreat.
Use wool. And then you had
Double kill.
the working class. It created the commodification of labor.
I don't rise the town. I take
Things
Godlike.
under feudalism, actually spoiled. Oh, they worked.
be raised event again.
Or whatever would send a sheriff.
Forward, by the way.
Ally has slain
The
Lord.
extent to which
Give
the Lord
no quarter.
needed to try to
Enemy has
the
been
land.
slain.
It was political, diplomatic,
Our turret is under attack. Legendary. Double kill.
surplus that the Lord amassed sold nearby markets.
Fear of water makes you drown quicker.
Surplus for the Lord, which then
Your team destroyed a turret.
distribution
Your team destroyed a turret. You destroyed a turret. Legendary.
peasantry. We had the exact
Our turret is under attack. Destroyed a turret.
or to be
Legendary.
with a sheep meant that everything had an economic value, an exchange value.
Victory!
That was not the case before. Why did it acquire this price? Because you knew how many sheep you could raise on an acre. You know how much, more or less, wool you would produce. International markets were providing equilibrium price of the wool, so you knew how much exchange value, money, you could gather per acre of your land. And of course, then, once that price was established, that exchange value per acre was established, suddenly land became a commodity to be rented out, to be sold, to be purchased. There was no real estate market before that. Land was either you inherited land, in which case you had it, and if you never inherited land, you never got it. And the only way of effectively getting land that you didn't have was through war, through conquest. Or if the king decided to grant you a plot of land. There was no such thing as a market for land, and there was no such thing as a market for labor. The enclosures, the eviction of the peasants created land as a commodity, and of course labor. Because the evicted peasants, effectively, they were roaming around the country, knocking on doors, saying, "I will do anything for work, for a piece of bread." That's the best labor market. That had never happened before in the history of humanity. People with nothing selling their labor price. That's the beginning of capitalism. But with this, you have the separation of the economic from the political sphere for the first time in history. Because suddenly you had merchants who acquired huge power through the accumulation of financial surpluses. Because the internationalization of those trade routes, the emergence of these few commodities as international commodities that bestowed substantial financial surplus upon those who handled them, whether they were the merchants, the ship owners, or the lords of the land, whose land now was used in order to cultivate, in inverted commas, wool. For the first time, you had this separation. You had lords whose political power and social power was now becoming increasingly disproportional to their economic power. You had those, dirty merchants, as they consider them, the riffraff, the ugly, dirty merchants, acquiring huge quantities of economic power that had nothing to do with their social status. They were not allowed in the palace. They were not allowed in parliament. They were not allowed in the gentlemen's clubs in London. And suddenly they had a lot more economic power than the lords. So the economic and the political sphere separated. And with industrialization, you throw into this mix James Watt's great invention, the steam engine, and this process just goes berserk. And you have globalization, which Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels in the manifesto described in the most poetic language when they say that capital must nestle everywhere, it must settle everywhere, it must enter into relations everywhere. So, and it was interesting because when Marx and Engels were writing that, it hadn't happened yet. But they foresaw the process that we live in, globalization. And with globalization now, we have, with this process of globalization, you have the establishment of these completely separate two spheres. Now, interestingly, in the 19th century, you will recall this. Well, you live in a very historic town. Liberalism was a philosophy, a political philosophy, at odds with democracy. To be a liberal, a genuine liberal, you must have been very skeptical about democracy, if not completely and utterly anti-democratic. The whole point about liberalism was how to preserve the right to track, barter, and exchange, in Adam Smith's famous expression, which was a right that many of the liberals, including John Stuart Mill, a very liberal person, a very progressive person for his age, he considered the idea of democracy. What is democracy? It's the rule of the many, to be a great impediment, if not a great threat, to liberalism. So this, when we talk about liberal democracy today, we're talking about something that in the 19th century was a contradiction in terms. To be a liberal meant that you did not believe in democracy. Yeah? Now, what was it that brought about a change, a transformation? Suddenly, liberals started embracing the idea of democracy. It was economic crisis, financial and economic crisis, beginning especially in this country, but also in Europe in the 1840s. Because the moment capitalism started turbocharging itself with the creation of what I will describe as networked companies, with the advances in electromagnetism, with, electric engines, the telegraph, all the communication technology, electricity grids. When electricity comes into production, and we move beyond steam, that's the second industrial revolution. When Edison created his empire, he created a networked company. Remember, from the electric bulb to the power generating station, to the grid, everything was part of this. We talk about Google now and Apple as being mega companies. Well, the mega company was invented with the second industrial revolution. But think about it, to set up a company like Edison's, or later Henry Ford's, and so on, you needed a lot of financing. You needed a lot of money. So suddenly, the new reversed order becomes very significant, because now, ever since the peasants were thrown out of the land, ever since the enclosures in Britain, the Lord rented out, or leased out, an acre or a few acres to an ex-peasant and said, okay, I will charge you rent, you raise the sheep here, and you keep the difference, the residual payments. So once you pay for the land, me, once you pay the workers, the ones that have been expelled and now are working for a piece of bread, subsistence wages, once you pay for the sheep, for the shearing scissors, whatever it is that you're using, your capital equipment, what you keep in the end is yours, is your profit. So suddenly these proto-entrepreneurs were forced, They didn't choose to do it. They were forced to become entrepreneurs. But how do you become an entrepreneur? First, you borrow. And usually you borrow it from the landlord. The landlord lends you the money to pay him rent with interest. So you see the reversal? Instead of finance coming at the end, we used to have production, then exchange or distribution, and then finally finance. Now we have finance first. First, at the beginning, there was the loan. Once the loan comes in, you hire the workers, you pay the rent. Immediately you have distribution. So you have finance first, distribution second. The last thing that happens is production. So finance suddenly acquires a very special place in capitalism. Now, the beauty and ugliness of finance, of banking, is that it is a magical process. Because once we move from the landlord to Edison and Henry Ford, it is impossible to finance capitalism simply by the accumulated wealth of some rich person like the Lord. There was never enough money in the hands of any financier to provide Edison with the capital, with the money he needed in order to set up his networked firm. So you needed banks to conjure up money from nothing. And this is how finance has been working ever since the Second Industrial Revolution. How? By creating money from thin air, out of nothing. It's really very simple. You get $100,000 to buy a house, to buy whatever, to invest in a business. What will happen is somebody's going to type 100,000, 100,000 into your bank account. So it's conjured up. The ancient Greeks had a word for money, nomisma, or coin, which comes from the verb nomizo, which means to imagine. So Aristotle defined the value of money as a common fiction since the ancient times. This is exactly what it is. So the banker simply types the money in there. You put your card in the ATM, and suddenly, you have 100,000. Somebody typed 100,000 on the on the system. And then what you can do is you can use web banking. You can wire the money. If you buy a car or a house, it goes to the bank account of the vendor. If you invest in a shop, it goes to the landlord, to another bank account with the same banking system. It doesn't matter whether it's the same bank or not. So these digits that were typed into your account simply are transferred to another account. That's all that happens. Now, the hope of the banker is that you are going to use this money productively, you're going to earn money from that, and then you will give the banker the money that will effectively tie up that loose end with interest. Now, to the extent that this works, and it really works magnificently, in my book I relate this in the form of a metaphor, a science fiction metaphor. It's a bit like a banker being the specially gifted magician who has a very long arm and can push his arm, it's usually a he, so allow me not to say she or he, right? Through the timeline. He pushes his hand into the future, grabs value that has not been created yet, brings it, snatches it from the future, brings it into the present, and gives it to you. Hopefully, you do productive things, and you create the value that will repay the future. This is my preferred metaphor for what bankers do. But once they learn the beauty and the glory of doing this, and they are privileged, in a privileged spot, because they can take value from the future, bring it to the present. They don't do any work themselves. And because they are the mediators between future and present value, they're ultra-rich, and not only ultra-rich, but central in societal processes, political processes. Yeah? So if you do this and it works, why not do more of it? Keep snatching more value from the future and bringing it to the present, and more and more. At some point, the present can no longer produce the value that it needs to produce in order to repay the present. And at that point, suddenly, those of us who have borrowed money, or some of us, have no capacity to repay it. A recession begins. People that work for us lose their jobs. They cannot repay their own loans, and then suddenly, the book of the bank is full of loans that are non-performing. At that point, if you and I, or those of us who have some money in the bank, realize that this is happening, we panic, we rush to the bank, this is a bank run, we ask for the cash is not there. And then you have the financial crisis that we had in this country and in Europe from the 1840s onwards. Now, to a very large extent, the United States of America, the way you understand your own country now, is the product of their political response to a sequence of financial crises beginning from the 1840s. Even the creation of the Federal Reserve in the beginning of the 20th century was a result of J.P. Morgan saying, I've had enough of bailing out my mates. Let's create a Federal Reserve that is going to be doing the job. And of course, he created it. And it was all stitched up amongst the bankers. Think of all the great institutions of this country, like Social Security, food stamps. They're the result of 1929. It's what brought this nation together, what created the United States of America the way you understand it. It's a sequence of financial collapses that puts together nations and polities and democratic processes. So let me go back to the beginning. We used to have one sphere of power. It was political, economic, cultural, military. Power had many different facets, but it was one sphere in which it emerged from. Then it separated into two spheres, the political sphere and the economic sphere. And as it did, the political sphere was increasingly democratized. Why? Because all the important decisions were moving to the economic sphere. So legitimacy, political legitimacy, and the capacity of the regime, of the system that we live in, to maintain itself and to be sustainable through the common belief amongst the people that this is a legitimate system, was based on democratization, of giving people the idea that they had control over their communities, the nation, their politics. But this democratization was only accepted by the proponents of liberalism to the extent that all the important decisions were migrating from the political sphere as the political sphere was democratized. Women understand that. It's like, the feminization of certain professions. When women moved into teaching, teaching lost its power. When they moved into health, in Greece now, a majority of judges are women. And you should see the judicial system collapsing. So it's a very, very similar process that we see. Power is migrating from the economic sphere to the political sphere, and the political sphere is democratized, increasingly. Now, something fundamental happened beginning in this country in the 1970s. After the end of Bretton Woods, which was what? What was Bretton Woods? Let's not get complicated. It was the globalization of the New Deal. Roosevelt's New Deal in 1933, which was, what was the basic idea? To put the financial genie, the banking genie, back into its bottle, to make banking boring, effectively to ban bankers from doing things that allowed too much money to be created and too many bubbles to be built up,